Hello. Welcome to my marginalized area argumentative presentation. I'm covering the topic of queer people in horror. Queerness has always been around. Consistently a marginalized group, queer folks have managed to make spaces for themselves, and one of these spaces just so happens to be within the horror genre. Queer viewers are able to see themselves within the characters of these films, characters such as the outcast, the survivor, or even the monster. In queer-coded films, like Jennifer's Body, was many people's introduction into the genre. There have been ups and downs, such as with Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs being poor representation, but there's always an appreciation for the genre nevertheless. Historically, queerness has been a questionable topic in Hollywood. During the Hays Code period, queer directors had to figure out how to cover these topics subtly, but unfortunately, this often led to these perversions being displayed within the monstrous role. F.W. Murnau, who was an openly gay man, directed the classic horror film Nosferatu. Within this film, many subtly queer themes existed, along with much other vampire media that we've come to see. Throughout the time, the queer other has morphed into new forms. During the 1980s, at the height of the AIDS crisis, gay characters and topics were framed as a warning to viewers, an attempt to dissuade viewers from going down a path of queerness. Transgender identities in horror is a whole new ballpark. Oftentimes, transgender identities are getting depicted in harmful ways, with characters being portrayed as dangerous or deceptive, and this leads to a hurtful response to the whole perception of queer identities. Now, characters like Danny from The Evil Dead Rise is a prime example of a transgender character who is not antagonistic, but just a character who so happens to also be trans. Now, there are a few cases where queer viewers, cling to antagonistic characters, like Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show. But unfortunately, in many cases, these so-called trans monsters are not transgender characters, but a cisgender male or female who dresses up as the opposite gender to get away with their crimes. Regardless of advancements of knowledge within the general public, many bigoted individuals will not acknowledge the difference between someone in drag and a transgender person. One of the main offenders of this topic is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. While Norman is not a transgender woman, which is explicitly said at the finale of the film, many viewers simply do not acknowledge that. Another character, Angela from Sleepaway Camp, is an example of this. Angela is a very sweet and quiet character who is repeatedly bullied and harassed throughout the film. The finale of the film reveals to the viewer that Angela had been born male through a very graphic view, and this is portrayed shockingly as to offend the audience. However, the character of Angela is also a very complex one, and very similar to Carrie White from Carrie. Angela was a victim who was pushed too far by her abusers. Depending on your perspective, these characters are not monsters, but cautionary tales to those who perform cruelties. Even so, queer audiences are still drawn in. Modern horror have started to embrace the queer identity. Genres such as camp, satire, and parody help to elevate these spaces even more. These styles of storytelling create a relaxed and humorous atmosphere, and with that, both queer and non-queer audiences can engage in conversations relating to queerness in a neutral environment. And thanks to that, queer characters are appearing more frequently, such as with 2022's Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. As time has gone on, less LGBT projects are getting canned or sanitized. And with bigger stories, such as Danny from The Haunting of Bly Manor, and in some cases, such as the Fear Street series on Netflix, with the main character of that film being both queer and the final girl. Take that, bury your gays trope. Now, what comes next for queer horror? Well, queer people always have a place in media, especially in horror. Now, thanks to this steady incline towards queer stories and queer protagonists, we're seeing a whole new dawn of storytelling. 2024's I Saw the TV Glow had a incredibly impactful aspect to audiences who were viewing it. I know, as somebody who went and saw the film, that anyone who was maybe dealing with struggles of repression would leave that film feeling completely changed. And this year, new movies such as Queens of the Dead, which features a plot revolving around a New York drag show and a zombie apocalypse, just promises to be a fun ride. But we're seeing a whole new side of queer media being shown within horror films. And to me, that makes me believe that horror is on a new path. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a good day.